Suzanne Fon, who you saw a second ago on your screen. We want to hear from her. She's giving us another angle right now. It appears on the west side of this terrifying crane collapse. Suzanne, what are you hearing out there?
I'm at the corner of Terry and Mercer right now. We've all been asked to move back a block or so. Let me give you a closer look from our vantage point right now. We're about a block or two from the actual collision, and I can tell you that moments ago, I saw a police officer escort a young driver and another person very quickly past us. We were told that that person was actually in one of the vehicles right by that crane, and so officers wanted to specifically talk to that individual. I can also tell you that I had just recently spoken to the transportation chair of the South Lake Union Community Council, and he told me that around 2 o'clock this afternoon, he was out here watching that same exact crane. He was watching one crane dismantle another crane, and that crane had been dismantled all the way down to the cab. He tells me that in this South Lake Union area, typically there can be as many as 25 cranes. Obviously, lots of construction projects around here. As I step aside for a passing police vehicle, I just want to bring to your attention, of course, as many of us know, there are lots of cranes out here, lots of construction projects underway. And as police continue to move around the scene here and remove the yellow tape and also put the yellow tape back up. Obviously, lots of crews out here trying to figure out why that crane came down on traffic. The good news out here, we can tell you, is that it is a weekend, and we all know how bad the traffic can be here on Mercer Avenue. They call this area Mercer Mess because the traffic can be backed up so much. And again, being on a weekend, even though it was devastating for all the people that were killed and the people that were injured, we know that this could have been much, much worse. That's the latest live in South Lake Union. Suzanne Fon, we'll send it back to you.
Suzanne, thanks very much. And of course, we do know it could have been much worse. In fact, that same gentleman that she spoke to, who is the chair of the South Lake Union Transportation Community Council, said that on a regular Monday through Friday, 10 times the amount of traffic today. Of course, that does not mean to minimize in any way what has happened today. What a very, very sad day in our city. You see the blue skies and the sunshine, but boy, when you zoom in and you see the devastation that our city is facing today, 4 people have been killed. That is confirmed by Seattle Fire Department. When a crane fell into traffic on Mercer Street, it fell from right up there, we believe, on top of this building. We know 2 buildings were under construction that the crane was working on. One of them we do know is a Google building. 5 cars crushed. And here's what's amazing. We do know 3 people survived this and are at Harborview right now. And when we get more information from Harborview, we will bring that to you. But the sad reality here, and this is a different angle. I don't think we have seen this one yet. You can see these 2 other vehicles here. That's on the opposite side of what we have been showing you. You can just see how massive that crane is. Press conference is happening right now. Let me stop talking and let's get right to it.
It's Harold Scoggins, Fire Chief of the Seattle Fire Department. That's Harold, H-A-R-O-L-D, Scoggins, S-C-O-G-G-I-N-S. At 3:28 this afternoon, the Seattle Fire Department was contacted via 911 of a crane that collapsed at the intersection of Fairview and Mercer. Once our units arrived on scene, what we found was there were cranes on both sides of the building, but the crane that came down on Mercer came down on 6 cars. Our units, we dispatched a total of 16 units from the Seattle Fire Department under the direction of Deputy 1, Deputy Chief Tom Walsh. They started assessing the victims and assessing the crane operators. What we initially found was we had 4 patients that were dead on arrival. 2 were the crane operators and 2 were in vehicles. They were in separate vehicles. We also had an additional 4 patients. 2 of those patients were transported code green to local hospital, and 1 was transported a code yellow. That was a 27-year-old male. The 2 code green patients, it should be noted, was a mom and a child, and they're doing okay. And the 4th patient was not transported and assessed on scene. So our rescue unit started assessing the scene, and we went into unified command with the Seattle Police Department trying to stabilize the incident. Now I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Chief Eric Greening to conclude the press briefing.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Greening, last name Greening. I'm the Assistant Chief of the Patrol Operations Bureau. Our officers arrived here on scene, set up traffic control, assisted fire with stabilizing the scene. Going forward, our detectives from the Investigations Bureau, our homicide unit, our traffic collision investigation squad, and our crime scene investigation squad will work with the Washington State Department of Labor and Industries. We will help process the scene and assist them with collecting the evidence to do their investigation. We also have some chaplains who will coordinate some grief counselors for any witnesses that were here. And we will make sure that this scene is locked down for as long as it takes to do a proper investigation. So I estimate these lanes may be closed into tomorrow evening. We'll work with Washington State Patrol, Seattle Department of Transportation to make sure we reroute traffic around this area. And we ask, if all possible, if folks can stay out of this area and let us do our investigation. We'll work with anyone that works in the area and needs to get in. We'll facilitate that. But anyone else, we ask that you avoid this area so we can do our investigation.
Chief, do you know what the cause is?
All right, folks, thank
I
you.
don't.
Any further briefings?
What about the age? You said the age of the other people involved, the 4 people that were killed?
That's the only one we have.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
You got it?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
All right, we just heard a briefing from the Seattle Fire Department. We were also expecting to hear from Seattle Police, so if that does happen, we will go to that right away. But again, looking live, just the sad news here, confirming what we have been telling you, that we know there are 4 casualties, 4 people died in this horrific day in our city as a crane collapsed on Mercer Street right onto oncoming traffic. We do know that there were 2 crane operators that died in this accident, as well as 2 people in their vehicles. One of the things that I did hear is that we know that there are people at Harborview that did survive them. One of this, Gabe, was a mother and her child.
Yeah, just remarkably, we heard Harold Scoggins, the chief of fire, saying that they are doing okay right now. Just unbelievable. Thank goodness for that. But again, the tragic news that 4 people are dead. That has just been confirmed by the fire department. And we now know that 6 cars were also involved. They were crushed by that collapsed section of the crane. We did hear from an assistant chief from the fire department who said they're going to be assisting with this investigation. They also have chaplains who they are going to have ready to go for victims, for anyone who needs support after witnessing such a devastating scene. As you can still see these live pictures on your screen, it's hard to wrap your head around this section of crane that collapsed onto the eastbound lanes of Mercer this afternoon around 3:30, falling from that building. You can see on the right side of your screen the damage severe to the top floor of that building, which it appears is a Google building that has been under construction, being built, that will soon house many of those employees. We also learned that the police department will be rerouting traffic as this investigation plays out. The assistant chief saying this could take time. They are asking folks, please stay out of this area of Mercer Street near Fairview that is right near I-5, and that is going to be a difficult situation for traffic. So many cars use that area to come in and out, use that street to come in and out of Seattle. But again, as you can see, it is because this investigation still is playing out. Those investigators are trying to figure out exactly what went wrong that caused this section of the crane to fall onto Mercer.
Yeah, I have a feeling this is a case that is going to, it'll take weeks, if not months, to figure out what happened here. Typically when a crane collapses, I remember when this happened in Bellevue a few years back, Labor and Industry comes in, they take a look at all that equipment, they make sure all the inspections are where they were supposed to be, but we're getting ahead of ourselves today. This story is about 4 people who lost their lives, 2 crane operators and 2 people in vehicles. There are loved ones and families tonight who are getting this tragic news, and there are 3 people we don't know how badly injured at Harborview who we understand are conscious tonight, but we do know that a mom and her child did survive this and are in good condition. We understand initially the fire department told us there were 5 vehicles that were crushed by this crane that you're looking at. That's the yellow apparatus that you see there. We heard just a few minutes ago from the fire chief that there are actually 6 vehicles that were hit, and that we were told that they will be on scene for as long as it takes. We have team coverage tonight. You have heard from Tammy Mutasa throughout this broadcast, as well as Suzanne Fawn. Let's go back to Suzanne Fawn. She is live on the scene for the latest with what she's learned. Suzanne.
Well, Michelle, you had talked about how 2 crane operators had been among those killed. That is what we had also learned from a person who was out here a little bit earlier. We talked to the transportation chair of the South Lake Union Community Council, and he told me around 2 o'clock this afternoon he was actually out here. He was monitoring what was going on. He was watching the cranes, and he had told me at that time he saw 1 crane dismantling another crane, and that the crane had been dismantled all the way down to the cab. Now, he has a lot of expertise in construction projects around here. He tells me that at the peak, there's as many as 25 cranes in this area of South Lake Union. He says, of course, what happened here will raise many questions about safety and concerns about safety. He also told me about the incident in Bellevue many years ago and what happened there and the safety concerns raised about that. Let's give you a closer look at the scene. We were moved back about a block about 15 minutes ago. We're now at the corner of Terry and Mercer. In the distance, of course, you see the aftermath. You see a number of crushed cars. You see the crane that's left on the ground. You see many flashing lights and a lot of yellow tape and a lot of law enforcement officers around right now, along with first responders. A lot of people around here standing on the outskirts wondering and questioning why this could have happened. I talked to one witness who was in her car, and she tells me that she was in her car and the crane fell 2 cars behind her. She again told us that she saw a dust cloud and she felt a jolt. She was so frightened. She thought more stuff could be coming down on her, so she got out of the way quickly and then she called 911. Back out here, just really a surreal scene. A lot of people cannot believe that this happened. But again, we know this could have been much, much worse if this was during a weekday and Mercer would be filled with many more cars. That's the latest live here. Suzanne Fawn, back to you.
And Suzanne, you gave us a lot of helpful information there about how this played out, the dismantling of the crane that somehow went wrong, that piece of the crane ending up falling from the roof of that Google building. We don't know exactly what went wrong, but we have given you several live looks at the top of that building where it appears there is at least one similar looking piece of crane. We heard from the chief of fire saying that they noticed several sections. Thankfully, that was the only one that it appears fell off the building or certainly caused that kind of severe damage in that eastbound lane. Just unbelievable images there.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.